You're listening to the Bear Down Chicago podcast with Logan Bradley, Ryan Dangle, Patrick Sheldon, Brendan Shagrew, and Jack Wright. The Bear Down Chicago podcast. Yeah, we're that Bears podcast.
All right, folks, welcome into another edition of the Bear Down Chicago podcast. I am your host, Ryan Dangle. Now, Patrick Sheldon, Brendan Shagrew, Jack Wright, Logan Bradley, and of course, Cam Ellis, our newest co-host. They all took the night off. I don't care. I've got some awesome guests that I am so very excited to talk about. We're going to talk a lot of things Bears. We're going to talk about what it's like to host a podcast in another language that covers the Chicago Bears. I am absolutely stoked about that. Before I do that, though, I do have some people that I've got to thank. You need a haircut. I need a haircut. If you're watching this video, you can tell I need a haircut. I'm actually growing this out for charity. It's going to get really gnarly. It's going to get really bad, folks. It's okay. But when I do get my haircut, it's going to be at Sheridan's Barbershop. They're located in historic downtown Wheaton, Illinois. They've been serving the community for 69 years. They've got 6 barbers. They're open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and they've got appointments available to book online or by phone at your convenience. Sheridan'sBarbershop.com, or give them a call at 630-668-0137. Maybe you're in the Naperville location. You want to stop by Hensel's Barbershop, owned by the same guys. They are fantastic. They've been open since 1966. They're open Tuesday through Saturday. They've got walk-ins available or appointments. You can book there at HenselsBarber.com. For both locations, it is where traditional meets modern. Now, if you're thinking about buying or selling a house, there's really one person you got to be talking to. But the best part is, what if you're thinking about getting into some commercial real estate? You're going to talk to the same guy. That is Jeff Cadwallader. Now, if you talk to Jeff Cadwallader with SVN Landmark Realty today, you need to make sure that you let him know the guys of the Bear Down Chicago podcast say hello. 630-254-4734 or visit GenevaJeff.com. If you talk to him, let him know the guys of the Bear Down Chicago podcast say hello. I would appreciate it. Jeff would appreciate it. And all the other guys would appreciate it. So please, please, please say hello. Now, I'm so excited about this. I had one of the great friends of the podcast. Her name is Heidi Zimmerman. Love Heidi. And she reached out to me at one point and said, you got to talk to the guys that do the FanaticOSOS podcast, basically Bears en Español. And I said, yes, absolutely. I want to talk to these guys. I want to find out more about what it's like to be a Bears fan, what it's like to reach out to those Spanish-speaking Bears fans. We've had a chance to talk to a few Bears fans from outside the United States, but it's my first time talking to these guys, and I'm super stoked about it. So first, I'm going to bring on David Schweke. David, How are you? How's everything going? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Loving it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm also going to bring on Jorge Gagiola. Jorge, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate your invitation. Hola, David. ¿Cómo te va?
All right. So, boys, you've been doing this FanaticOSOS podcast since 2017. For a Bears podcast. That's quite a long time. That's a great longevity. How did it get started? And I really am very curious, where are a lot of your listeners coming from? Are they coming from the States? Are they coming from Mexico? Are they coming from Spain? Like, what does that kind of look like?
Oh, so it started 2017. It was one of these see a void and fill it, right? There was nothing in the podcast space at all talking about the Bears in Spanish. And there was definitely, so I want to go a little bit further back. I think to understand why podcasting in Spanish is so popular and why it would work is because, Mexico has a history of American football for over 100 years, right? So it's not like a new game. And the interest is not new. So the fans are sophisticated. The fans are smart about the game. They understand the game. Some of them have played it at high school and college level. We have one of the guys we work with was a GM of a professional team in Mexico. So there was definitely one of these things where there was a void to do it in English. There's definitely like most people can. I bet communicate in English, but it was about finding a place where we could get the voices of all these people that had a ton of knowledge to be able to communicate and do it in their own language. And that's what we kind of did. And the community kind of grew horizontally, like the people did more and more podcasts, and we kind of always promoted across the platform. It was always about, like, the big thing for us was always high tides raises all ships, right? So promote as many podcasts. If somebody wants to start a whole new different podcast, let's get behind them. And that was the crux, or that was the beginning of the podcast thing in Spanish. And we haven't really looked back. I mean, now we have some in Spanish, some more about numbers, some much more passionate, and some that is just a bunch like there's one that's all girls. So there's a lot of really cool ones that have come out of it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So Jorge, can you maybe tell me, like, where the majority of your listeners are listening now? Like, is it Mexico? Are you getting some that are in South America? Is it Spain? Like, where are the majority of those listeners? Jorge, just real quick, you are muted. Don't worry about it.
Great.
I do that on a regular basis.
I think that the most of our viewers are from Mexico City, from whole Mexico, whole the country. But I think we have in South America. I have known that we have in Central America, in Guatemala. We have 4 or 5 people in Guatemala. We have 1 or 2 in Cuba. And recently, we have had a lot of people from Spain. So I would say that Mexico and Spain are where the most listeners or viewers we have.
I know we were talking about this before we hit record, boys, but it blows my mind that a team. So I grew up a fan of the Bears, but they're a stone's throw away from where I grew up. It was kind of passed down from my parents, right? My grandparents, like, Bears, like, you're going to be a Bears fan. And, I've met people from Australia. I've met people from England, from Scotland, from Ireland, right? Just that are diehard Bears fans. So I've got to know, how did you guys become Bears fans?
Okay.
Let's start with you, please.
I will start because I think I'm older than you, David. You just said that your parents have some influence in the team you chose, but in my case it wasn't like that. My father used to be a Steelers fan, and the first game I remember that I saw is in maybe 77, 78, I don't know. But it was the Super Bowl against Dallas. Of course, I would like to say that I liked Dallas better because of the star. I don't know why, but that's the team that I like better. But then I found out about the Oakland Raiders in that time. I happened to see Jim Plunkett. That was my favorite team. Tom Flores, who was the manager, and all the defense that I really appreciate much. That Lyle Alzado, Ted Hendricks, Lester Hayes, Mike Haynes, and all other people. But in 1983, in Mexican television, we used to have 1 or 2 games a week, and suddenly they televised a Bears game, 1983, and I watched a very special player that you may know, wearing number 34.
Yes,
that used to. I don't know anything about yards or anything. I just watch him run and pass through defenders and gain yards and the graciousness he had to run, and that was it. I can say that I like Chicago Bears because of Walter Payton.
Just really quick, David, before you go, I get chills, man, just thinking about it, just like how watching him. I mean, because we all knew, right? You grow up, you watch the highlights, you see the games and all that stuff. But when you're watching it from afar and you feel it, you fall in love with the way in which he played the game. Man, that was cool. Jorge, I loved it. David, talk to me. How about yourself? How'd you become a Bears fan?
So, I mean, I grew up, my blossoming with football was the 85 Bears. So I think that if you look at many fans in Mexico, they tend to be my age. Exactly. And then I guess you look forward to the Urlacher days and maybe those Super Bowl fans do something, but we're immensely loyal. I've been there through, all the terrible years. Let's be honest. Even Walter Payton played in one or two good teams. The rest of his career, he played in just horrible teams. Poor guy. Now that we're talking drafts and all that stuff, I've become quite the expert. I've followed it my entire life. And I think that we've, particularly on our platforms, have definitely given it a lot of attention throughout our whole existence. Like the draft has become our Super Bowl kind of, because there's not a ton of playoff time. There hasn't been we've had one playoff appearance and two playoffs appearances in the time we've been around.
It's not been easy to be a Bears fan, which is, one of the things I want to know how you guys feel about this. There are a good number of Bears fans not cheering for the Lions to win, but maybe happy for Lions fans because they saw such bad football for such a long time. Where are you guys on that debate?
Well, personally, I don't think much about the Detroit Lions. I'm glad they are in the NFC Championship game. What I would be pessimist about is having the Packers. I obviously grew with all 1980s dominance from Chicago Bears to the Packers. So for me, getting Green Bay revert that, and now they own us. It's really, really painful to me, really. But the Detroit Lions, I don't feel much from them, and Minnesota Vikings not either, because my brother likes the Vikings. My daughter likes the Vikings, not because of anything. My daughter has 10 years old, but he likes them because of the purple color. That's the only answer she has. But I pass a lot of time trying to convince her that Bears are the number ones, but the team doesn't help me much these days.
It hurts because it's true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
David, what about you?
I don't want to turn. I mean, let's be honest. I'm a hater. At the end of the day, great for Dan Campbell, great for everybody. They made it this far, but let's cut it off. I cannot deal with Detroit winning the Super Bowl. I want us to win a Super Bowl. I don't want anybody else to win it before us. I don't think there's anything wrong with being
no,
absolutely. I'm not like Jorge's 100% wrong. Sorry, 100% right. It's not the Packers. I don't like. It's not going to be a visceral hate, but I don't want anybody winning it. It's not this. It's nobody in our division. Like, I don't take any NFC North pride. Let's put it that way. I could care less.
Yeah, people that are talking about that, I can't understand. I will never cheer for the Green Bay Packers as long as I live. It's not going to happen. And, I'm definitely, I wouldn't say I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan, but, after all the times that they've kicked Green Bay out of the playoffs, I definitely am more favorable to the 49ers. And so, no, I think I'll be cheering for them. I'm happy that the Lions, it's a great team.
The way that team is constructed. I mean,
it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Ryan, but I will remind of 1984 season. We lost to 49ers in the NFC Championship. And from day on, then that day on, I really don't like the 49ers. Sorry.
I get it. So, okay. So do you want then, are you cheering for the 49ers or are you cheering for the Lions then?
It's painful, but I would say Lions, but I don't think they make it to the Super Bowl.
Okay. All right. It's gonna be an interesting one. All right. Just because let's just talk AFC just for really quick.
Mhm.
Do you think it's Baltimore or is it KC? Who's gonna be the representative for the AFC in the Super Bowl?
Mahomes.
Okay.
Yeah. Jorge, what about you?
I hate to say this, but this is gonna be the Super Bowl of Taylor Swift.
No more. I'm all done with that. All right. So, boys, before I want to talk, I want to make sure that we get to talking about Shane Waldron because I have some thoughts on it, and I'm sure you guys have some thoughts on it. But I just have a few more like Bears Day, game day kind of stuff that I want to ask. First of all, have either of you made it to Soldier Field for a game yet?
I have.
Okay.
I think it might. When I was there, it was at that point, it was the coldest Bear game in the history of the Bears. At that point, I think there's been one since, and it was a 6-3 game or 7-3 game. it was a miserable season too. I think we won. It was the year. It was the year we. Sorry, it was like 27-3 or something. I don't know. But it was the year we won 3 games right before. And we played San Francisco, and we kept Kaepernick to 6 yards. I remember my fingers got so swollen inside my gloves, I had to take them. It was just miserable.
There are several times a year where Chicago is the coldest place on the planet Earth because Antarctica is in their summertime, and so Chicago is the coldest place. Yeah. It's crazy. Jorge, what about you? Have you made it up to Soldier Field yet?
No, unfortunately, I have been. I hadn't been able to be there, but I hope that changes soon. The problem for me, just like David said, is that my wife doesn't like any kind of cold weather. Not even the colds we have here. That for you, I would say it's springtime. Yeah. Like 17 degrees here. Ayúdame, David. And
like high 60s.
Like 60s. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
she doesn't like that, and so it's a problem for me. And I couldn't go alone.
It was -30 Celsius wind chill last week. People don't understand what that kind of cold is like. It's miserable. You go outside, everything hurts. It's awful. All right, boys. Then another one. I think this is really important. It's game day. It's Sunday. The Bears are playing. What traditions do you have? What food do you have to have in front of you? Are you superstitious at all? For me, if it's a big game, I have to wear my Walter Payton jersey, and I like to make sure that there's no one anybody close to me unless I'm holding now my 4-month-old daughter. She bounces like with me while I'm watching the game, but otherwise everybody else just kind of like leave me alone. What about you guys? What does the game day tradition look like for you?
Well, in my case, I used to work some Sundays, so it's not for me. It's a little bit difficult to follow the games each and every week. This past year I had because I have some kind of rest in my workplace. So I can say that this year my biggest way to see the games is with my family. I even wrote an article in Spanish Bowl about this, and how difficult, like I said, is to handle a daughter to like our team, but mainly because of her. It's not too easy for me to follow the game completely, but because I like playing with her and stuff. But I try to be at most games that I can and see the most that I can.
Okay. David, what about you?
Well, I mean, I empathize with. Like, I have trouble. I mean, I have 2 kids. I end up rewatching games several times over. It's it is what it is. I think we all, most of us, fortunately,
Yes.
have that great problem. I don't have much. My favorite part is every time I start a tradition, like the team loses again. So I'm trying to like find a new one that works for us. It's been a rough couple of years, so
Yes.
there hasn't been one that stuck. But we're still like, if anybody's got one that'll work for them, I'm all ears. But like I said, like I'm ready to be superstitious, but there's just nothing that's been working. So I'm not going to try anything and just have it go down. But so I'm still open. I'm hoping this next year. We're so close to so many wins, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. We're still terrible. I mean,
The rest of the boys on this podcast are really mad at me because it was the Detroit game that we were winning and we ended up losing. I texted, "Hey, good win for us," and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Nothing I did is going to influence that game in any way, shape, or form."
oh, it's like it's like when the guys on the TV go, he hasn't missed a kick in 30-something odd kicks, and the next one is going to blow it. Like, you have to take some ownership, Ryan. I mean, you have to, I'm with your guys here. Like, you can't be calling the games like 3/4 of the way through, especially the way we've been playing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Boys, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I even tweeted about it. I am done with this argument. I'm done with this conversation, but I really want to hear your thoughts. Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, or another quarterback. Who do you want the Bears to have next year, and who do you think the Bears will have? Jorge, I want to start with you on this one.
Okay, it would be an endless argue about this one, but let me tell you something. First of all, I like Justin Fields very much. I really like him, and I was very excited when in 2011 draft day we got him in the 11th pick.
Mm-hmm.
But through the years, through these 3 years, I have been able to watch not much from him. He's a very good athlete. He's very talented. Probably like no other in the ground right now. He was electrifying. He can pick that ball and score a touchdown in any run he has. But I don't see him taking us to the Super Bowl. I may be wrong, but I don't think I have seen enough of him to think that way. Of course, Caleb is. I haven't seen him much, but when I see the highlight reel, I see a different kind of quarterback. Maybe it's because it's college, but I think it's time to move on from a person that I think it's not going to take us there to get one that maybe will do. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think we must have this particular quarterback that may be the one.
Okay.
So, I mean, look, I watched every single USC game this year. I live out in California, Southern California, so I watched every single USC game. Last year, this year, he is the real deal. There are other questions about him that I need answered that I will not have answered, that I don't have access to. Like, how much influence does his dad and his family have over his life? That's a real question.
Absolutely.
After the UCLA game, he didn't talk to the press. That, even worse than the 3-pick game against Notre Dame. That's a big one. You can't do that in Chicago. You can't do that anywhere, but you can't do that in Chicago specifically. So there's some questions out there. I also think that there's just you could always find something on somebody. That once we start picking at these prospects, we are just picking it to the bone. If you go back and watch Caleb tape, he had a terrible inside offensive line. He had, terrible, like this year, he had terrible receivers, and he still had really good numbers. It's not every time you get to pick a guy like him. He's not like, you don't get a quarterback like that every year coming out of the draft. So if you can answer the tough questions on character, which are real questions, they're not like, and I think these guys are going to get, people hired on them, and I'd be asking people that work, as, equipment managers. I'd be asking everybody from the floor on up about Caleb right around now. But I can tell you that, from my experience, from people that I know that are related to the program, there hasn't, like, the external noise about Caleb's personality is not shared so much inside that program. There are a lot more understanding of Caleb inside that program. Let's put it that way. And he's not like, there hasn't been rumblings about him, at least publicly. So I do all this to say, if he's the clean prospect that he looks like, you can't pass up on that. You can't pass up on Joe Burrow, right? You can't pass up on these once in a really rare guys. Because if we're drafting only 8, then there's no doubt about it. We're probably sticking with Fields, but this is not that. Now, there's always the opportunity somebody's going to offer you 4 draft picks and Mason Crosby, and then you're going to have to think about it. But the truth of the matter is, I see us trading that number 9 pick more than I see us trading that.
I think that might be the more interesting pick, is what are they going to do at 9? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what's going to happen there? Like, just forgetting that they have 2 picks inside the top 10. It's you just don't see this happen very often, right? So that part makes it really exciting. We could talk about that for a long time, but boys, if it's okay, because I am spent on that conversation, I want to talk about Shane Waldron. Coming in from the Seattle Seahawks, with the firing of Pete Carroll, he becomes available. He has play calling experience. He has worked with a lot of different types of quarterbacks. In our last episode, Brendan Shagrew talked about how he has worked with Russell Wilson. He has worked with Geno Smith, and he's worked with Jared Goff, right? Like, the guy has a lot of experience working with quarterbacks. I like that component to it. The thing that has me worried is that the Bears were ahead of the Seattle Seahawks this past season in terms of scoring and efficiency. This was a hire that I was not super thrilled about. So I'm interested to hear where you guys are at in this.
But in my case, I would say it's a very good signing, considering that the other candidates, considering I don't know, Cliff Kingsbury, Greg Roman, and all other guys that were interviewed, I think Waldron is the best option. I believe if he is going to be better than Getsy, I would say yes. So I'm fine with this. The problem is to see who is he going to work with, Fields, Caleb, or May, or not. I don't know who. But I would like to think that he is going to be better than what we had. So I'm fine with it. I hope he understands the situation that is going on here in the team, and I think he was going to inherit a very good team. I would say. With several focused problems like interior offensive line and receivers, and the thing in the quarterback position. So I think he's going to be successful as long as he has good material to work with.
Well, I mean, I think that they saw that they led the system, right? They want the McVay branch. More so, like, there's the Shanahan, but they like the McVay branch. The McVay has proven to be much more flexible, and he's definitely incorporated a lot more, just everything into his game. Like, so there's been power runs instead of outside zones sometimes. There's been a lot of that stuff where I think that's why Waldron was so popular. I think it's really tough, right? Nobody's letting go of an OC that's a wonderkind who's also called plays. It's not going to happen. Those guys go for head coaching jobs, and even if they don't call plays, they go for head coaching jobs. I mean, look at Miami. So we have to be realistic about what is available and what we're going to attract. Of the market that was available, I do believe Waldron was a good pick. Waldron was great in first and second down, terrible in third down. A lot of that can be said about the line, but you can say that, about most teams in the NFL at certain points. Their line starts to fake. So you're not helping your players out. I don't know. It's tougher to mask problems on third and long, right? Especially on your offensive line. The short of it is, I think they really like the system, but they wanted somebody who can adapt. And if you look at his history, he's been with a bunch of quarterbacks. Was he my first choice? No. I do want to see who comes in as QB coach. I think that's a really important hire. And I think if he just brings everybody from Seattle, I think it's a terrible move. I think Sanjay, wide receivers coach, I think he's coming. That's great. I hope their running backs coach is not coming because their running game wasn't great. And we'll see. We'll see. I definitely think that we need to get a good staff, and not like Nagy when you try to say, okay, now we're going to get a guy that runs an air raid offense, and now we're going to get a guy who runs an outside read, and we're going to make a mix and match of whatever offense we can put together. That doesn't work. So just get a good staff together. I know I'm rambling, but one of the things that you look at in success rates is look at what Detroit did. They went at it, and they got a lot of ex-NFL players, guys that have been around for a long time, and they went in, and you can tell that experience is on that staff, especially on those position coaches.
Very much so. Absolutely. Speaking specifically about the wide receivers coach, I know that it was DJ Metcalf that was saying essentially that the wide receivers coach, whose name is escaping me right now, I think you even just said it, but
Sanjay, yeah.
That he breaks down routes better than any coach that he had ever worked with ever, and that kind of excites me.
Have you seen his history, like how long he's been in coaching? No. The guy's 50-something, 55 years old, but he started off, when I say, like, there's a couple of guys on that really started off, like, well, Waldron started off as an intern and as a PR intern. Sanjay started off, teaching like high school, like he was born in England. Like they've been around the game for a long time. That's something that sometimes is lost with a lot of these young coordinators. There's a lot of game. That's why I think sometimes like having experienced position coaches is real important, and why they didn't want to get rid of SEMO.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to see if they bring in Greg Olson, who was interviewed for the offensive coordinator position, but has been a quarterbacks coach for seemingly half the league. But having that experience, when they said that he was Rex Grossman's quarterbacks coach,
unleash the dragon.
Yeah, that was something. So yeah, we'll see.
I just read that precisely about what David said, that he is interviewing some of the coaching staff from Pete Carroll that are no longer working there. So it would be a very good move, just like you just said, David. I think it could be good. No,
I want to see who. Like, I think that. Here's the interesting part of Waldron. I think one of the reasons he was brought in is because he's adaptable. Mm-hmm. And so if he's adaptable, if that's true, he'll bring in people outside of his just Seattle experience, right? He's been around the game for a bit, so he can reach out to quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see how he fills out his staff. They haven't been in a hurry, which is smart. I think that, they're going to be very limited. There's so many questions, and I don't want to touch it, but do you even give Justin Fields a playbook at this point? Like, what do you do? Like, so how do you're forming an offense, right, around a player? Who is that? So there's a lot of questions that are still around here that need to be answered very soon, but we won't know till April.
And yeah, right. Which brings back the question that I don't want to talk about is who's going to be the quarterback. It's a great question. Who's he going to be working with? We were talking last week. How much input does he have on what the Bears do? Absolutely none whatsoever, or maybe just a tiny bit. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
I mean, I think if they're smart, the decision's not made. I've heard a lot of Gabriel, who was the Pace's right-hand man in Chicago. Yeah. And he was saying that the biggest mistake they made when they were analyzing Trubisky is that they made up their minds to it. Mm-hmm. They didn't even meet with Watson. They just they fell for a shamboozle of this whole dinner where he gave the name of I think it was Jim McMahon or something like that. It was just they didn't do their whole. They fell in love way too early in the process. There's a lot of questions to be answered. Like, I watched all the tape, and there's still questions about this guy. Like, this is a huge decision. Like, you can get a lot for that pick, but at the end of the day, and I know we're circling this pick, but I think it's important to have this conversation. It's about blue chip players. It's about
yes.
We're not talking. We can have a bunch of, and I hate to use him, but I love the guy as a player. But let's say Roshan Johnson. He's a great overall player, but he's not a blue chip player. You can have a ton of them, and you can be okay, but you're not going to win it. You need guys like Sweat that make a difference, and make everybody else below him just like, you're coming with me, and I'm pulling you with me. He makes that whole defense change. Blue chip players, and so we have the opportunity to get 2 blue chip players. Do we really want to trade back and get a bunch of more players? But are they going to be these difference makers? And I think that's where we've erred in the past. We haven't had, we can go back and you can't count that many players that are real difference makers, and that's what's killed us.
One of our co-hosts talks about that often is, when was the last time the Bears had a blue chip player on offense? Would you say DJ Moore is that guy? And before that, when's the last time you had a guy that would change the flow of the game?
There's Walter Payton. Walter Payton.
Yeah.
No, another one.
I can tell you, blue chip is such a tough thing, because blue chip implies almost all pro, in my opinion. Okay. Yeah. So even Sweat is on that. Imagine what we're talking about. Sweat is more than that, because he elevates the rest of the defense. So not only does he put up the numbers, not only is that you can tell the difference pre and post him, because he's this magnet, right? He's a force multiplier. And so that's what really makes a blue chip player, right? He's a force multiplier. And so it's harder. Blue chip players are more important on the inside on a defense, right? You need to have if you have a great DT, it's the hardest position to get. A pass rushing DT, a good three tech. That's you don't find those. They don't come out. Then after that, you get these guys like Sweat. There's not a ton of guys that are 6'7", 270 that really play tough all the game. You get for every Sweat, you got a guy like Chase Young who's got the same measurables, but he doesn't have the heart.
It's been fun to watch Montez Sweat play, and I'm very excited to see what they do in addition on the other side of the defensive line. They got to bring in somebody else. I don't know that guy's got to necessarily be like a top 10 pick, but someone that can get after the quarterback. Boys, this kind of, I think, is we're going to start to maybe wrap things up just a little bit. There is no defensive coordinator yet. Names that have been thrown out, a couple. I know Chris Harris, former Chicago Bear. And then you also have Eric Washington, the Washington defensive line coach. Do you guys have anybody that you're excited about? Do you think it really even matters, because Matt Eberflus is kind of going to be running that defense? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
Well, I do think that Eberflus is going to to run the show. From the three men that I heard that I have heard, Terrell Williams, Eric Washington, and Chris Harris. I think Eric Washington is who has a little bit more upside, just because what he has done in the Bills defense. I just saw that he had 54 sacks last year, so he was the DL coach. But the other two really don't know them much. Chris Harris, as you said, played here, but only like four years, I would say. I remember that he went to the Super Bowl in the 41st Super Bowl, and then went to Carolina, I believe. But that's not much what I read from all those guys, just because we were so immersed in the offensive coordinator thing. So, but let's see what turns to be in the next couple of weeks. I hope.
Okay, David, what about you?
I mean, I love all the picks. Nostalgia-wise, I love Harris. Like, let's be honest. I think this defense had 22 interceptions, very few fumble recoveries, and Chris Harris was amazing at fumbles. Yeah. We need to get punching at the ball. We need to start recovering. That is not an accident. That's from repetitive nature. And I think that's a huge, like, if we can, so we had 22 interceptions last year. I think we had, I off the top of my head, I believe we only had like 10 or 11, even less than that. We had very few fumble recoveries. And that's something that can definitely change. And that's something that I think Harris can help with. The other two are great, especially, you can never go wrong with a great defensive line coach. It is what it is. It's like having a good offensive line coach. Those guys, you don't get rid of them.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for your time. Just run me through, for any of our listeners that might also be Spanish speaking, how
for
can
people
they
who want to learn to speak Spanish?
Hey,
way to do it is listening to Jorge doing his thing on FanaticOSOS.
How can our listeners and our viewers, how can they get after you guys? How can they get you on Twitter? How can they become fans of the things that you're doing?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us, Ryan. It's very, very exciting to first be part of your audience and then be part of your show. It's amazing. My X or Twitter, it's Gaxman1992, and FanaticOSOS, you can find them in FanaticOSOS.com. We haven't been able to produce some shows lately, but we are working hard to do some things before draft, and I hope you enjoy it.
Absolutely.
So you can find me at Bears Mexi, or just Bears in Español. Just look it up there. Bunch of podcasts that are doing it now are the Bear Girls and La Osera. So they're still taping all the time. You guys want to learn Spanish, practice Spanish? There you go. Going to Spain or South America for a trip. Why not listen to some girls speak about football? Could be a lot worse.
Absolutely. Last thing for you boys, any shout outs, anybody that might be listening to the podcast that you might like to give a shout out to, any of the guys that you're podcasting with, anyone at all that you might like to give a shout out to?
Well, I would like to give a shout out to my partner. First of all, Toño Contreras, Contreras, who is co-founder of the project along with David, and well, all the boys, Matos, Paul, Juan, Jose Antonio. There, Heidi, you know it better than we, and all the people. Juancho Name, my partner, also. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And the same guys, basically like all the crew from Spain, which is Los Era, which is then the South American crew, Maxi and all them. So basically anybody who's ever listened to us, and there's a great community that's done. And like I said, if you guys want to brush up on your Spanish, we're always talking bear stuff. So come on by.
Absolutely love it. Before we get out of here, folks, I've just got 2 quick shout outs. I'm going to give it, she got one at the beginning. She's going to get another one. Heidi Zimmerman, just helping me because I do not speak Spanish. She was really helpful in introducing me to you guys, as well as just telling me a little bit of some of the stuff that I can't, necessarily grasp because I'm not a good Spanish speaker. And so Heidi, I appreciate you so very much. The other one goes to Jonathan A. Hand. He saw that Robbie Gold tweeted something on a podcast, and he tried really hard to advocate for Robbie coming on the show. And so that was really cool. Jonathan, just so you know, we really appreciate you. For all of us here at the Bear Down Chicago podcast, so that's Brendan Shagru, that's Patrick Sheldon, Jack Wright, Logan Bradley, and Cam Ellis. I am Ryan Dangle. Folks, we cannot thank you enough for hanging out. We know you can get your Bears content anywhere, and you have chosen to hang out with us, and it means absolutely more than any of us could possibly say. Folks, please hit like, hit subscribe, share with a friend, and as always, bear down, Chicago.